Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wealth Room YouTube channel. And today we have the great privilege of being with Johann Els, our favorite economist in the country. Johann, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Yourself, Grant.
Very good, thank you. And Johann, unfortunately, you've got the the crazy job today to give us an update on what's going on in the economy. So let's talk about some themes for 2021. What do you think the global themes for 2021 look like?
I think the most important first one is very strong global growth. We've seen this fiscal package coming through in the US. More than that is coming through. It's not final yet, but the Democrats also want infrastructure spending packages. Strong US growth on the back of very expansionary monetary and fiscal policy. And growth can even surprise on the upside, 5% plus, close to 6% perhaps. Strong Chinese growth. So very strong global growth. And of course, that's very good for commodity prices. But on top of that, a weak dollar. And that's a major investment theme. Weak dollar, on top of strong growth, on top of strong commodity prices, that's an environment where emerging economies will be doing well. So yes, quite a turnaround from last year, despite the risks that's still around about COVID, infection rates, slow rollout of vaccines, etc. But by the end of this year, bulk of the developed market populations should be vaccinated. And yeah, strong growth here, weak dollar, better outlook for emerging economies.
Wonderful. And while we're talking about the global markets, let's just go back to this weak dollar. What is driving the weak dollar and the strength in the rand at the moment?
So the weak dollar, very low investment returns in the US. On the back of those expansionary policies, the Fed has given us an assurance that interest rates are going to stay low for long. No tapering of QE in the short term. That's a long way off. The Fed is going to absolutely insist that inflation starts rising on a more sustainable basis, that the unemployment rate comes off before there's any tapering, before there's any talk of interest rate increases. So very low investment returns. Money flows to emerging economies in search for better yield. That weakens the dollar. Oh, and that, of course, helps emerging market currencies and the rand. Despite our own weaknesses, the rand will get the benefit of that as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Johann. Let's move on to the South African economy. And what are the big themes for 2021 for the domestic market?
I think the first thing, and it comes from the better global support, is strong growth here as well. And of course, that comes with lots of riders because we know the risks. So it doesn't mean that if we have strong growth in 2021, that comes through into 2022 onwards. The medium term is something we can talk about later, but strong growth could be surprising many market participants, could be surprising many analysts. Even Moody's came out the other day and said 4.5% growth for South Africa this year. So strong growth, upside surprise compared to expectations. And then, of course, coming from the global side as well, a strong rand, strong and stable currency. We've seen some of that coming through late last year. It's still weak compared to fundamentals. And yes, I know there's lots of local weaknesses regarding the fiscal position, etc. But I think in the short term, global situation will dominate what happens in South Africa. And then, of course, low inflation and low interest rates, similar to what we've seen. Now that the currency has strengthened, that helps keeping inflation in check. So low inflation and low rates for long. I think the cash is trash theme is back. US rates are remaining low for long. Local inflation means local interest rates doesn't have to go up. And when they do, maybe sometime during next year, it's going to be slow and measured upward pace.
Okay, thanks, Johann, for that. Now, we spoke about growth quite a bit in that theme there. Where do you think South Africa's main growth is going to come off the back of the COVID epidemic?
So we likely had 7% growth last year. It's not final yet. We need fourth quarter numbers. My forecast for this year is 5%. That's slightly above consensus. But the first point is it comes from strong global support. That's strong US growth, very strong Chinese growth. Chinese growth could surprise upside of 9% this year. Strongest in many years, Chinese growth. So that support through trade comes through to South Africa. So strong global support. And of course, just a big bounce from last year's negative numbers. And thirdly, the inventory cycle will help us significantly. Last year, through the lockdowns, sales came out of inventory. So inventory is depleted. Now that we need to start rebuilding inventories, we need to produce to rebuild inventories. That adds to GDP. So that's the third leg. Strong growth this year. And I think that will be a big positive surprise to markets when they start seeing these better numbers coming out. I have to interrupt myself there and say, hang on, fourth quarter 2020 and first quarter 2021 could surprise on the downside, given the lockdowns, given the risks around COVID. But overall, 2021 growth could be stronger than what most people are seeing.
Well, that is absolutely great news. You've got me excited for 2021. Once again, thank you so much for your time and your valuable input. And let's hope that before we chat again next time, we actually don't have those negative figures and we're all going up from there.
I hope so. Thanks for chatting, Ron.